How's your hammer, everybody? I'm PTDevil, and today we're doing another Pokemon playthrough challenge. I know that I haven't yet finished my Emerald Nuzlocke, but I want to kind of try and do this one just to try and break up the monotony a little bit. So today I'm going to be walking you through an entire playthrough I did off on my own. Can I beat Pokemon Crystal without catching any Pokemon? To further elaborate, I am not allowed to throw a Pokeball at any Pokemon, meaning that I am not allowed to catch any Pokemon. Any other methods of obtaining Pokemon in-game are fair game. If that sounds familiar to you, that might be because you've already seen MNJTV do this exact challenge already, albeit in an earlier game, that being Heart Gold. Mikey's video on this challenge is one of the reasons why I wanted to get into doing Pokemon playthrough challenges in the first place, because I like seeing him try to figure out the puzzles beforehand to see if I could do the same. So if you haven't already seen his video on the challenge, there's the thing. However, one major gripe I had with this challenge in particular was that while there were several factors which made it significantly easier than it had any right to be, a big reason why he was able to complete it was because he had Ampharos. William the Ampharos easily carried him through his playthrough with its decent bulk, powerful electric stab, and the ability to easily spread paralysis. Granted, he also had to deal with the drag factor of Magcargo, but still. I wanted to see if it's still possible to do this challenge without Ampharos, so I decided to implement the same rule set but in an earlier game, one where Ampharos isn't available at all, that being Crystal. So sit back, grab yourself a Rage Candy Bar, and let's dive into Can I Beat Pokemon Crystal without catching any Pokemon? My journey begins and I am immediately tasked with choosing my starter. I immediately eliminated Chikorita since I am not a masochist, and between the remaining two I choose Totodile for two reasons. The first is that Feraligatr evolves at the conveniently low level of 30, the earliest level for any fully evolved starter to date, whereas Typhlosion doesn't reach its final stage until level 36, tied with several others for the latest evolution. This means that Feraligatr fits the weird level curve of the Johto region much better than Typhlosion. I will probably have Feraligatr by around the 5th gym, which is around when you would want a fully evolved starter. If I don't severely overlevel, I won't have a Typhlosion until just before the 8th gym, and that is just not gonna fly. The other reason I chose Totodile over Cyndaquil was because of HMs. Since I am limited in what Pokemon I can obtain, I need to make sure that what Pokemon I do get are able to learn the necessary HMs in order to get through the game. Specifically the water HMs of Surf and Whirlpool. Originally I thought that Totodile was the only one I could get without catching that could learn these moves. However, upon further research, I later learned that there is one, and only one other option in all of the Gen 2 games that can allow you to complete the game. But it's not that easy. In Gold and Silver, Dratini is available as a prize Pokemon in the Goldenrod Game Corner long before you need Surf, and it gets access to all of the water HMs you need to progress in the game. It has to be a Dragonite in order to get Whirlpool, but that's not necessary until you get to the Dragon's Den near the end of the game, so you have plenty of time to overlevel. However, in Crystal, Dratini has been moved to being a gift Pokemon within said Dragon's Den, well after you'll need both Surf and Whirlpool, so that's not an option. What is available now are the Evolution Stones, meaning you can evolve the gift Eevee you get from Bill into Vaporeon, who gets access to all the water HMs right out of the box. However, it's not that simple. The only way to obtain these stones before the post-game, to say nothing about not catching Pokemon, is by registering the phone number of a certain NPC trainer, waiting for said NPC to call you in the overworld, and praying that they call you to tell you about a cool item they found and want to share with you. At which point you have to hike all the way back to them in order to pick up the item they want to give you. If they call just to say hi, then they just waste your time, but if they call asking for a rematch, you have to drag yourself back there anyway and defeat them a second time in order to reset them so that they'll call you again later. As an added bit of annoyance, the Pokegear can only store 10 phone numbers in Gen 2, 4 of which are mandatory and cannot be deleted, giving you an effective storage capacity of 6 numbers, meaning it's entirely possible you could run out of space for more numbers by the time you reach the NPC you need. In the case of the Water Stone needed to get Vaporeon, the NPC you need is Fisherman Tully, located on the Mahogany side of Route 42, a location which either needs Surf, which defeats the whole purpose, or requires you to navigate through the long and winding detour through Mount Mortar, battling wild encounter after wild encounter in order to bypass the water route. And while he is right next to Mahogany Town, surprise, you don't get access to fly until after you need Surf, meaning if he calls you to pick up the Water Stone, or Arceus Forbid for a rematch, you have to make this long and winding detour again, and again, and again. I hope I'm not making assumptions on your guys' character when I say I speak for all of us when I say, flag that. So, Totodile it is, and this intro is already long enough, so let's just move on. I progressed through the game normally, defeating my rival just like in any other playthrough. I then received 5 Pokeballs from Elm's assistant, and am offered to be shown how to catch Pokemon by a random dude in the grass. I passed because that's completely unnecessary in this playthrough, and promptly sold off all the balls that I got. No use for them, so I might as well make money. I then make my way to Violet City and challenge Faulkner almost immediately. Since Chomper the Totodile is the only one gaining any straw knowledge, it is extremely overleveled for this part of the game, so I was able to handle the fight very easily. It took a few hits since I didn't have super effective damage for any of his Pokemon, but I was never in danger of losing, so it was an easy sweep for my first badge. Afterwards, Elm's assistant meets me in the Pokemon Center, where he gifts me my first new team member, the Togepi egg. Despite being understandably desperate for more members, I don't intend to add this Togepi to my team because Togetic really sucks in Gen 2, so I don't put any special effort into trying to hatch it. I then make my way through Union Cave and the Slowpoke Well, and my Totodile evolves into Croconaw pretty quickly along the way. At this point, Chomper is wildly overleveled for this part of the game, but I'm still afraid of my rival's Bayleaf. Now, not only is it incredibly bulky for this part of the game, but it also has a powerful, super effective stab move against my only Pokemon, whereas I can't even hit it with non-resisted stab in return, to say nothing of super effective moves. It's gonna take a mountain of luck and skill in order to get over this wall. I decided to try battling Dave before the gym in order to gauge how much stronger I needed to be. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention I named my rival that. It just came to me for some reason. I have no idea why I did that. I took out his Ghastly easily with just one bite. Then he brought out the dreaded Bayleaf, and I decided to try using Rage in order to hopefully turn his Razor Leaves against him. However, he went for Poison Powder instead, and while he missed, I knew I couldn't screw around with fighting this thing since there was no way I was going to win a war of attrition against a bulky Pokemon like Bayleaf. I decided that my best bet was to try to spam Bite as much as possible and pray to the flinch gods. However, not only do I not flinch him, his first Razor Leaf crits, dealing a lot of damage. I heal up to try to tank a couple more hits, and his next Razor Leaf crits again. Once that happened, I was reasonably sure I was going to lose. I'm forced to use a rare potion to heal out of crit range, and praise Helix, I finally get a turn where he doesn't crit. Not only that, but my follow-up bite gives me the flinch I needed, and while my next one didn't KO, his next Razor Leaf also didn't crit, meaning I was free to finish off the job on my next turn. I took out a Zubat in 2 easy turns, and I had won the battle by just the skin of my teeth. Feeling confident, I headed for the Azalea Gym, expecting to wipe the floor with Bugsy and claim my second badge. I underestimated him. While his Metapod and Kakuna were both trivially easy, his Scyther was faster and bulkier than I anticipated, meaning that his Fury Cutters would get problematic before long. Adding injury to insult, his third Fury Cutter crit, putting me in KO range for a fourth if I didn't finish it there. Fortunately, I was barely able to 3-hit KO the Scyther to win, but a worse damage roll could have cost me the battle. I survived 2 close calls with my wildly overleveled Pokemon by just the seat of my pants. This solo run isn't going as well as expected. On my way through the Ilex Forest, my Togepi finally decides to hatch. Just in time for the rival battle, right? and I sadly had to teach Chomp or Cut in order to get through. I reached Goldenrod City, and my Croconaw solo run is officially over since I can now get not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 new Pokemon for my team. Oh yes, you heard me right. Without catching a single Pokemon, I am going to go from soloing this run with Croconaw to having a full team of 6 from just this one location. I could actually get more than that if I wanted to, but I only really care about these 5. The first Pokemon I get is the Odd Egg, which I received from the daycare man just outside of Goldenrod, and will hatch randomly into any one of the Gen 2 baby Pokemon sans Togepi. These Pokemon come with the event-exclusive egg move Dizzy Punch, and have an overall shiny chance of 14% across all potential outcomes. I saved before receiving the egg, intending to reset for either an Elekid, a Magby, or a Smoochum in order to maximize my final team's type diversity. That ended up not being necessary, however, as my first egg hatched into a Magby, which I promptly named Snooter. It wasn't shiny, but who cares. The next Pokemon on my list is Kenya the Spiro, which you can get from the gate attendant at the north exit who asks you to deliver it to his friend on Route 31. Yeah, we ain't doing that. To quote Mikey on this, I commit Grand Theft Spiro and claim Kenya as my own. It's a great Pokemon to have, especially since it's treated as an outsider Pokemon and therefore gains boosted Straw Knowledge. By the way, if you don't know why I keep calling Experience Point Straw Knowledge, you need to go watch the very first playthrough I ever did on this channel. Seriously, go watch it, it's pretty funny. For the remaining 3, I head underground and grab the coin case, because we're betting it all on 23, baby! As I mentioned earlier, you can actually get Pokemon as prizes in the game corners of Kanto and Johto. The exact Pokemon you could get vary depending on the specific game corner and what version you're playing in. But for the Pokemon Crystal Goldenrod game corner, my choices are an Abra, a Cubone, and a Wobbuffet. I decided to pass on the Wobbuffet, partly because it's the most expensive, partly because it overlaps in type with Abra, and partly because it's Wobbuffet. But I still intend to get 3 Pokemon from this one location. I buy as many coins as I can without dropping below 6,000 Pokédollars, this will be important later, and grind on the slots until I can get 1,000 coins. I then head to the prize counter to buy an Abra, which I name Spoonman, shout out if you get that reference, a Cubone I name Bonk, shout out if you get that reference, and a second Abra, which I don't bother nicknaming since I don't intend to keep this one. With this second Abra in tow, I head straight for the department store because, believe it or not, I can now do an in-game trade. In every other Johto game, the NPC here will offer to trade you a Machop for a Drowsy, a Pokemon which isn't too difficult to obtain, being located just outside of Goldenrod, but obviously I can't go catch a Drowsy. However, in Crystal alone, he still offers to trade you a Machop, but instead he wants an Abra. An Abra which, as you just saw, I was able to purchase for the real-life equivalent of about 20 bucks, meaning that this in-game trade is fair game. Literally the only other in-game trades that can be done within this rule set in the entire series are the Abra for Mr. Mime trade in all Kanto games where he wants an Abra, due to Abra being similarly available in the Celadon game corner, the Nidorino for Nidorina trade in specifically blue version due to the exact same reason, and the female Dragonair for either Rhydon or Dodrio trade in all Johto games due to Dratini being available from the Goldenrod game corner as a gift in the Dragon's Den, or both. There's a few other trades which you can send any Pokemon for, but they're almost all post-game, so they're not practical for a playthrough. Additionally, there are other trades which can be feasibly done without catching, and can be done during a playthrough. However, it's not possible to do a captureless run in any of these games due to the existence of mandatory captures. Regardless, with this golden opportunity, I am of course adding Muscle the Machop to my team. While I'm there, I also grabbed the TMs for Thunder and Ice Punch, which I had just enough money left over for, and immediately teach both of them to Spoonman so it has an actual attack. I don't bother with Fire Punch, however, since Snooter will learn that move soon anyway, but I wanted to get the coverage of all 3 of those types alongside Psychic, since no Pokemon in the entire game resists all 4 types. I now had my full team of 6 for the time being, and it's looking like a pretty solid team, if a bit Kanto heavy for a Johto playthrough. However, now's the time that I need to do a mountain of grinding! The strongest member of my new squad is Bonk the Cubone at level 15, which is fine, but still a bit underleveled for this part of the game. Snooter, Spoonman, and Bonk, however, are all at the very low level of 5, which is just unacceptably weak outside of the very beginning of a playthrough. After far too long grinding, I get the rest of my team up to speed, evolving Spoonman into Kadabra and Kenya into Spiro during the process. I then take on Whitney. Her Clefairy barely survived a Karate Chop, but it only did minimal damage with a triple double slap, so I was able to freely finish off the next turn. Next was her Miltank, who missed her first rollout while my Karate Chop crit, dealing well over 2/3 of its health. The next rollout hit, but it did even less than Clefairy's double slap due to muscle resisting the hit, and I finished it off with another Karate Chop. Whitney was down. May I just say that I've never really struggled with Whitney, at least to the extent that the majority of the fanbase struggles with Whitney, but I think this has to take the cake for the absolute easiest time I've ever had battling her. Like, I only sent out 1 Pokemon, and it only took less than 1/3 of its health. That was just, like, comically easy for her battling what is considered the hardest gym leader in Johto. After the Crybaby needs to be reminded to give the badge, I head north to defeat the Pseudo-Woodo and make my way to Ecruteak to meet Bill in the Pokemon Center. While I don't need to get Vaporeon since I've already got Chomper, I decide to give it a shot anyway since I'd rather not have to teach Chomper Whirlpool as well if I can avoid it, and I have no particular other use for this Eevee anyway. So I make a quick detour to Goldenrod to pick up the Eevee, and I name it Longshot since it'll be a long shot if I actually get to use this, and I go ahead and visit Route 42 to pick up Tully's phone number. Back in Ecruteak, I grab the HM for Surf in the dance studio, which I promptly teach to Chomper, then make my way to fight Dave in the burned tower. Kenya did big damage to his Haunter with Peck, and then the Haunter used Curse to bring itself down to red HP immediately, so I was able to finish it off easily. After that, the switch battle style allowed me to swap out Kenya before the Curse damage took into effect, and I brought out Muscle to battle his Magnemite. I immediately OHKO'd it with a Karate Chop. Next was the Cursed Bayleaf, but unlike last time, I've actually had a proper counter to it in the form of Snooter the Magby. Fire Punch did well over half of its health, and all it did in return was miss a growl. Somehow, I was able to freely finish it off the next turn. Spoonman then came out and quickly OHKO'd a Zubat, earning me a dominant win. After witnessing the rebirth of the legendary beast, I head to the gym expecting to wipe the floor with Morty and his poison ghost. I underestimated him. Again. While I did exactly that to his ghastly and first Haunter, I suddenly remember how fast Gengar is and how frail Kadabra is on the physical side since Ghost is a physical type in this gen. So I swapped it out before anything could happen. Side note, for those of you who are wondering why I didn't immediately evolve Spoonman into Alakazam, it's because I'm playing on an emulator and I can't do the trade. I did turn off Impossible Evos, but that's not going to take into effect until level 37, which I think is fair. It's about the same for a fully evolved starter, but it does mean that for the time being, I have to be a bit more careful with Kadabra. I sent out Kenya to deal with the Gengar since it was immune to his Shadow Ball. However, it put me to sleep instead. I try to wake up naturally, but Gengar uses Dream Eater, dealing 3/4 of my health easily. I have to wake up immediately, so I use my one awakening, causing his next Dream Eater to fail. He missed his next Hypnosis as well, allowing me to get in damage with a Peck. It did less than half, then it put me back to sleep. I decide to switch, bringing in Bonk since Levitate isn't a thing in this gen, meaning I can hit it with super effective ground moves. After a failed Dream Eater and another missed Hypnosis, I do just that, but the Gengar just barely survives. It misses another hypnosis, and I think I'm in the clear, but then my next Bone Club also misses. Then it put me to sleep and healed up with a Dream Eater, getting up to almost about half HP after it had been at about 1 or 2 previously. I used my only full heal and dodge another Dream Eater, hoping to get one more missed hypnosis and have a chance to finish it off, but it goes for Shadow Ball instead, and Bonk of course goes down. I bring in Chomper, and thanks to one final missed hypnosis, I finally take out the Gengar. Lastly is his final Haunter, and I bring Spoonman back out to finish his sweep, earning me my 4th badge. I head to Olivine and receive my honeydew list for medicine from Jasmine, then make my way to Cyanwood City, during which point Bonk grows to level 25, where it learns Boomerang. I'm mentioning this move even though I've skipped over pretty much every other move since then, because it's actually a major turning point in this playthrough. Up until now, Bonk has been a pretty underwhelming member of the squad, with the fight against Morty being a shining example of this. However, this one move ended up changing everything, because Boomerang is a 50 base power ground type move that hits twice. I now have access to what is essentially Stab Earthquake at the absurdly low level of 25. That is phenomenal. It doesn't even matter that it's only 90% accurate. That's still a marked improvement over Bone Club's 80% accuracy, so it was a very welcome change in every conceivable way. With his newfound power, Bonk is able to grow rapidly, evolving into Marowak not long after that, thereby becoming even more powerful. I also evolved Muscle into Machoke shortly after that for good measure. Then it was time to take on Chuck. Kenya did big damage with Peck, while his Primape's Karate Chop did only about a 4th, so I easily finished it off the next turn. Next was his Poliwrath, and I brought out Spoonman, who not only did big damage with Psybeam, but also confused it and immediately hurt itself in its confusion, giving me a free victory for my 5th badge. Afterwards, Chuck's wife gives me the HM for Fly for beating up her husband, and then I meet a guy who wants me to take care of his Shuckle named Shucky for a while to protect it and let it see the world. I immediately boxed it and never gave it back. I then give Jasmine the medicine and finally had the opportunity to challenge my Bae, but decided against it since her Steelix was 7 levels stronger than my entire team. Instead, I head for the Lake of Rage and defeat the red Gyarados, since obviously I'm not allowed to catch it. I then take on the Rocket Hideout and quickly evolve Chomper into Feraligatr and Snooter into Magmar in rapid succession. After shutting their hideout down and gaining the HM for Whirlpool, as if on cue, Tully calls me to tell me he's found the Water Stone just in time. Since I'm in the neighborhood, I pay him a visit, collect the stone, and immediately evolve Longshot into Vaporeon and teach it Whirlpool immediately. I then take on Price. He leads with Seal, and I lead with Snooter. You may be asking why I decided to lead in with a Fire type against Price's Water type. Well, as it turns out, despite having Water and Ground Pokemon in his squad, Price doesn't actually use any moves of those types. Meaning that Magmar is actually the smart choice because it resists all of the Ice-type attacks that Price always uses, so Magmar is the smart move, actually. It's not like I forgot to switch it out because I got too used to fighting the gym trainers. No sir, I'd make good decisions. Regardless of what my reasonings may or may not have been, Snooter's Dizzy Punch crit, while the incoming Icy Wind barely even tickled. I still outspeed even with the speed drop, so Seal goes down. I bring in Muscle to deal with his Dugong, and while his Aurora Beam did a bit of my health, my Karate Chop did all of his because it crit as well. Finally was his Piloswine, and I brought out Chomper, who was able to outspeed and OHKO it with a Surf, winning me the battle. I then head back to Olivine to battle Jasmine, feeling confident with my stronger team. I lead with Bonk to deal with her first Magnemite and easily OHKO'd it with just a single hit from Boomerang. She brought out Steelix and I brought out Chomper to attack its weaker special defense. Sure enough, Surf was enough to OHKO. Finally was her second Magnemite, and I decided to bring out Snooter since it would appreciate these special attack EVs more than Bonk would, completely forgetting how EVs are unlimited in this gen and I don't need to worry about budgeting them. It ended up not mattering anyway since Fire Punch was also enough to OHKO, meaning I OHKO'd her entire team without even taking a single attack. Jasmine, baby, I am so sorry, but it had to be done. I'll call you in the morning. We'll talk later. After dominating my waifu, I hear about Team Rocket's shenanigans at the radio tower and head there immediately, encountering my rival during the process. I lead with Muscle, expecting him to lead with Sneasel, but he led with Golbat instead. His wing attack did a little less than half of my health, but my strength did even less than that, so I'm forced to switch. I bring in Chomper to tank another wing attack, then fire back with a Surf which finished off the Golbat. Next was his Magnemite, and I knew that Snooter could easily OHKO it with Fire Punch since this one was even weaker than Jasmine's. This proved true, and Magnemite goes down. Next was his Haunter, and I bring out Spoonman, who also destroys it with a Psybeam. Next was the Sneasel, so I brought out Muscle to do what I'd intended to do, OHKO the Sneasel with a Karate Chop. Finally was his Meganium, and this one just... What the hell, Dave? I deal about 2/3 of its health with Fire Punch, so I think I'm in the clear, but then he uses Body Slam, which not only did about 1/3 of my health, but it also paralyzes me. I heal the paralysis, and the next Body Slam immediately paralyzes me again. I'm forced to heal out of KO range and attempt to fight through it naturally, but then the next Body Slam crits, KOing Snooter anyway. Paralysis, paralysis, crit. I did the math, and the odds of that happening are 0.56%. Is that rarer than a shiny? Well, no, but it was still aggravating. I brought out Kenya, who finished off the Meganium with Fly. I had won the battle, but I was still frustrated. I take my anger out on Team Rocket, taking them out one by one until I reached their final executive, since everything else was a pushover. Snooter did well over 3/4 of his Houndour's health with Dizzy Punch, while his Feint attack did a little less than half of mine, meaning I was clear to take it out the next turn. I brought out Bonk to deal with his coughing, since, again, no Levitate. I missed my first Boomerang though, but then his coughing also missed a Smoke Screen. Again, for some reason. My next Boomerang hit, and it turned out to be just enough to OHKO. Finally was his Houndoom, and I brought out Chomper to tank hits easier. This proved to be the smart call since Houndoom outsped Chomper and hit pretty hard with Feint attack, but my incoming Surf was thankfully enough to OHKO. Team Rocket was done. Afterwards, I received a clear bell from the director and had the incredible honor to be able to catch the legendary Pokemon Suicune, which I promptly killed and never looked back. Afterwards, I make my way to Blackthorn, where I finally have the opportunity to get rid of Cut on Chomper. I then head straight to the gym to battle Claire. I lead with Spoonman against her first Dragonair. Ice Punch was just barely not enough to OHKO, but I was still safe since her Dragonair missed a Thunder Wave! Seriously, how are these people missing 100% accurate moves like that? I haven't been hitting them with Sand Attack or using Double Team. Am I missing something? Because if not, how are they? I finished off the Dragonair the next turn. The next two Dragonair both went down the same exact way. Barely surviving an Ice Punch, paralyzing me with Thunder Wave, me healing, then tanking a Slam, then finishing them off with another Ice Punch. Finally was her Kingdra, and by this point Spoonman had taken far too much damage for comfort, so I swapped him out for Muscle to brute force my way through it. She lowered my accuracy with Smoke Screen, but I was fine since I was using Vital Throw, a move which cannot miss the target. After 2 turns of that, Claire switched to the offensive, dealing 3/4 of my health with Surf, meaning I was most certainly dead in the next turn. However, my third Vital Throw was super clutch and crit, finishing off the Kingdra before it could finish me off. Claire was done, and I finally had all 8 badges. Well, I would if Claire wasn't a sore loser! I chase her to the Dragon's Den, prove myself worthy with a quiz, and obtain my final badge after Claire gets chewed out for being a cunt. Now that I have all 8 badges, I can get 2 new members for my team. The first of which I can get by heading right back into the shrine, where the Elder gifts me a Dratini with the move Extreme Speed, which I appropriately named Flash. I have to have this Dratini on my team. Disturbingly, Feraligatr doesn't get access to Waterfall in this gen, and while I could teach it to Longshot the Vaporeon if I wanted to, I'd rather not have an HM mule on my way through the victory road if I can avoid it, since the path to and through the victory road is incredibly long in Gen 2. Dratini is the only other line of Pokemon that I can have access to that can learn Waterfall, which means that if I want to get through the victory road with my whole battling squad, I had to have Dratini on my battling squad. However, this forced me into a dilemma since I already had 6 Pokemon on my team, meaning that I had to find someone to replace. After much deliberation, I decided to get rid of Kenya. It was already the weakest member of my team, to the point where I wasn't even using it in battle much, and all of the things that Spiro can do, there are other Pokemon on my squad that can do them better. Flying coverage isn't as useful anymore when Snooter and Spoonman can already cover the types it's good against with their own stab typings. And as far as being a good physical attacker, both Muscle and Bonk were already better than it due to their better stats and much more useful typings. Additionally, even though I'm going to be stuck with Dragonair for the majority of this playthrough, Dragonair is still better than Fearow. Their base stat totals are about the same, but Dragonair has much better move pool typing and coverage, which makes it better now, and even stronger once it evolves into Dragonite. The only real downside to this is that I lose out on a flyer until Dragonair evolves, but at this point in the game, I don't really need Fly all that much. From here on out, it's going to be all forward progression with very little backtracking, so if I ever need Fly for whatever reason, I can just go take a break to grab Kenya for one quick flight in the meantime. Oh, also, I should mention that this Dratini is female, so I could do the in-game trade for Doris the Dodrio, either by trading Flash or by breeding it with Chomper to get another female Dratini. I just didn't want to. I already replaced one normal flying type with boosted experience for not having enough coverage, so even a better version of the exact same thing isn't going to help me much. I grind up Flash to get it caught up with the rest of my team, evolving Muscle into Machamp and Spoonman into Alakazam in the process. After evolving Flash into Dragonair, I head to Mount Mortar to do some last-minute training and to get my other new Pokemon in the process. I make my way to the Karate King in the deepest portion of the cave, and after beating him, he gifts me a Tyrogue. Unfortunately, I forgot to go in there with an empty slot in my party, so I wasn't able to actually get this Tyrogue. Oops. But I don't intend to use this Tyrogue on my team, so I don't bother coming back for it. Now, Hitmonchan was tempting with its coverage of the elemental punches seeming appealing, but not only are they special in this gen, but I already had those exact same moves on Snooter and Spoonman, both of which who can make better use of it than Hitmonchan. Additionally, Hitmontop's Learn set in Gen 2 is just garbage, and while Hitmonlee is a perfectly fine choice, Machamp is just strictly superior in every way, so I just don't bother. I already have a better fighting type anyway, so let's just move on. After making my way through Kanto and through the Victory Road, I'm faced with my final challenge before the League, my final rival battle with Dave. He actually leads with Sneasel this time, and I lead with Snooter. His Fury Cutter did literally 1 HP, while my Fire Punch immediately OHKO'd it back. Next was his Golbat, and I brought out Spoonman. Psybeam just barely didn't OHKO it, and it fired back with a wing attack that only did about 30%. He didn't heal, and my next Psybeam finished it off. I brought Snooter back out to deal with his Magneton and OHKO'd it with another Fire Punch. I switched Spoonman back in for his Haunter, and this time Psybeam OHKO'd. Snooter comes out again to deal with his Kadabra, and while Dizzy Punch didn't kill it, it did confuse it. However, it fought through and used Future Sight, but it was fine since my next Dizzy Punch finished it off. Finally was the cursed Meganium, and once again Fire Punch failed to OHKO. This time, however, the Meganium went for Reflect, which I didn't care about since I was using a special move. After tanking the Future Sight from before, I was free to finish off the Meganium with another Fire Punch, and Dave was done once again. And now it's time to grind again. As of beating all of the gyms and trainers in Johto, my team is currently sitting around the mid to late 30s. The Pokemon in the Pokemon League are all in the late 40s to early 50s, so I needed to get my team up to speed. I grinded them up to different levels depending on how easy the grinding was. For example, Chomper and Spoonman could easily OHKO everything into Victory Road and had plenty of PP to do so, so I got them up to level 52 in a matter of minutes. Snooter and Bonk, however, struggled to KO much of anything into Victory Road and run out of their best moves pretty quickly, so I kinda gave up at level 46 and then just gave them 2 rare candies each to get them caught up with the rest of the squad. This was the final team going into the league, which I have to admit was a pretty cool team, if I may say so myself. I head inside and begin my challenge with Will. It was at this point that I realized I had done goofed. I completely brain farted and forgot about the colossal level gap between the first Elite Four and the Champion. Since I did all my grinding in preparation for the Champion battle, this resulted in Will's strongest Pokemon being 6 levels lower than my lowest leveled Pokemon, and 10 levels below that of my strongest. This is actually a huge problem. Not only am I overleveled now, but I'm gonna get even more overleveled since I can't skip the Elite Four and go straight to the fight that I trained for, which means I'm only gonna get stronger as I fight through the Elite Four. You think I'm joking? Well, laugh at this, Mother Farfetch, because I'm counting them off! Spoonman started off by immediately outspeeding and OHKOing both of Will's Xatu with Thunder Punch. Then Snooter OHKO'd the Jinx with Flamethrower. Spoonman came out again and OHKO'd the Slowbro with another Thunder Punch. Then Snooter OHKO'd the Exeggutor with another Flamethrower. Will went down without using a single move. Next was Koga, who was similarly easy. Spoonman obliterated the Gyarados with Psychic. Fortress was OHKO'd by Snooter's Flamethrower after it stalled a turn with Protect. I brought Bonk out to deal with his Muck to mix it up a little, and Boomerang was just enough to OHKO. Venomoth went down to Snooter's Flamethrower, then Spoonman took out his Crobat with another Psychic. Koga was down, again without taking a single hit. Next was Bruno, and this fight was also a joke. Spoonman outsped and OHKO'd all of his fighting types with Psychic, except for the Rock-type Onix, which Flash OHKO'd with Waterfall. The only thing of note was that his Hitmonchan got in damage with a priority Mach Punch, but other than that, it was another clean sweep. Next up was Karen, and may I say it has been genuinely so long since I played through Gen 2 that I had forgotten what her original sprite looked like, and well, not to be rude, but she almost looks like she could pass for Agatha when she looks like this. I switched up my lead this time since I didn't want to lead with a Psychic type against a Dark type specialist. Muscle landed a Cross Chop on the Umbreon, which instantly destroyed it. Snooter then came out and OHKO'd the Vileplume with a Flamethrower. Then I brought out Spoonman, who OHKO'd her Gengar with Psychic, then her Murkrow with Thunder Punch soon after. Finally was her Houndoom, and I brought out Chomper to try to make it a little close, but nope, it outsped and OHKO'd with Surf. Karen was also taken down before she could do anything. Finally was Lance, and I decided to let Spoonman sweep his entire team because I had given up hope. I immediately OHKO'd the Gyarados with a quad super effective Thunder Punch. Then I finished off his first 2 Dragonites with an Ice Punch each. Next was his Aerodactyl, which went down to a Thunder Punch. Next came his Charizard, and for the first time in the entire league, Alakazam didn't OHKO. The Charizard barely survived a Thunder Punch, then fired back with a Flamethrower, which did a little over a third. He didn't heal, so my next Thunder Punch finished it off. Finally was his third, final, and strongest Dragonite, the ace of his team, and the strongest Pokemon in the entire league. I steeled my nerves, readied my attack, then outsped and OHKO'd it with Ice Punch. I had beaten the Pokemon League. So, to recap, the only Pokemon in the entire league that I did not outspeed and OHKO were Koga's Fortress, who stalled with Protect, Bruno's Hitmonchan, who got damage in with a priority move, and Lance's Charizard, who just barely survived the hit. That's it! The all other 23 Pokemon that I fought in the league all went down in one hit before they could do anything. This is probably the worst way that I could have possibly beaten the Pokemon League. And not only does it leave an unsatisfying taste in my mouth, but I pretty much doomed myself to having to face Red, because there is no way you guys are going to let me get off with that easy of a sweep. Kanto doesn't really have any plot aside from a little power plant part thingy, and almost all of the gym leaders are even weaker than the Elite Four that I literally just swept, so they're also incredibly easy. So I'm just going to focus on a few standout events that happened throughout Kanto. The first thing I want to mention is that now that I have access to the Celadon Game Corner, I now have access to 3 new Pokemon which I could add to my team. Those being a Pikachu, a Porygon, and a Larvitar. While Larvitar was tempting since it starts at level 40 and I wouldn't need to grind it up as much to get it up to speed with the rest of my team, I didn't want to have to sit through grinding all of the coins needed to get it since it was by far the most expensive Game Corner Pokemon available at 8,888 coins. Are you kidding me? Plus, the only Pokemon I would replace for a Larvitar would be Bonk the Marowak, and considering what's about to happen, that ain't happening anytime soon. I head to Rock Tunnel, the only place in the game where you can find wild Cubone. I brought Kenya back out for one last hurrah, taught it Thief via TM, then beat up all the Cubone I could find until I eventually found one that had a thick club. An absolutely broken held item that increases the attack stat of my Marowak by double. Bonk has now gone from an underwhelming and underperforming fringe member of my team to a powerful pseudo-Earthquaker with a solid damage output, to an unstoppable juggernaut that OHKOs anything and everything foolish enough to stand in its way. How's that for a character arc? Oh, also I evolved Flash into a Dragonite, and only had to grow a few levels to do so. Also, I made the disturbing realization that literally the only way to Pewter City is through the Diglett's Tunnel, which required Cut on the other side. Even more disturbing was that I had reached the end of the game, and the only Pokemon in my possession that could learn Cut was still Feraligatr. That's it. Not Dragonite, not Marowak, not even Vaporeon. I thought all of the evolutions could learn Cut. Turns out only Espeon and Umbreon and later Sylveon can learn Cut. You know, the only ones you would expect not to cut you. The only way I could get another Pokemon that could learn Cut would be if I went back to get that Larvitar from earlier and evolve it all the way up to a Tyranitar, evolving it all the way up to level 55, all for a single use of Cut? It was ridiculous. I ended up having to go all the way back to Blackthorn to delete Surf just so I could safely teach and delete Cut again. Lastly, for the honorable mentions, is the final rival battle with Dave in Mount Moon. I wanted to bring this up since I hardly ever hear anyone mention it in a Johto Challenge playthrough, and it's actually a pretty good experience, so it's worth making the trip for it. It ended up not being a big deal since I OHKO'd his entire team, but like I said, it was still worth it for the training regardless. Finally getting back to our regularly scheduled program, I head to Viridian City to face Blue for my 16th and final badge, and for the first time since before the league, I was not over-leveled for a battle. Thunder Punch did huge damage, but didn't OHKO, while the Pidgeot uses Mirror Move and punches me right back. Let that sink in. He doesn't heal, and my next Thunder Punch finishes it off. He brings out his own Alakazam, and I leave Spoonman in for a fun mirror match I was sure I'd win. Ice Punch does about half, while his Psychic does less than that. I go for an Ice Punch that I'm sure will finish it off, and it lives with what has to be literally 1 HP, and immediately uses Recover, healing itself out of KO range. I switched to Thunder Punch hoping to paralyze it and hopefully interrupt another Recover, but I ended up critting it instead, finishing it off. Next was Rhydon, and I brought out Chomper to easily OHKO it with Surf. Next was Exeggutor, and I brought out Snooter. I decided to play it safe and used Confuse Ray, causing itself to hit itself in its confusion. I went for a Flamethrower, which ended up finishing it off, so I ultimately don't know if the confusion was necessary or not. Next was Gyarados, who was another easy OHKO with Spoonman's Thunder Punch. Finally was his Arcanine, and I brought Chomper back out to deal with it. His Flamethrower does very little damage, while my Surf just barely did an OHKO. Blue heals, I think for the first time in this whole playthrough, and my next Surf gets it right back to red. He heals again, but my third Surf finally gets the high damage roll needed to OHKO, winning me my final badge. And now for the first time since the league, it's time to grind. My team is currently sitting around the high level 50s. Red's team is in the late 70s to early 80s, the highest level gap of any main series Pokemon game outside of the remakes where they raised the bar even higher. If I want to beat this game, I have to raise my Pokemon strength. But at the same time, I don't want to make this a repeat of the league with me just instantly destroying everything, so I had to be careful not to overlevel my team. I challenged Red with my team around level 71, lower than even his weakest leveled Pokemon. He leads with his Pikachu, and I lead with Bonk, of course. Quick Attack barely even tickles, and my Boomerang obliterates the Pikachu in a single hit. He brings out Venusaur, and I switch for Snooter. I play it safe again with Confuse Ray, but unlike Exeggutor, Venusaur breaks through the confusion and immediately starts charging up a Solar Beam, something which I was not keen on taking from a Pokemon 6 levels stronger than me. I go for Fire Blast, risking a miss, and praise Helix, the attack hits and OHKOs the Venusaur. He brings out Espeon, and I bring Bonk back out, intending to obliterate it with my strong physical attacks. However, the Espeon uses a Reflect, causing my Thrash to do less than half. And now I'm locked into Thrash for 3 turns unable to switch or heal, and while I got it down to Red, Espeon took out Bonk with 2 Psychics. I brought out Flash to finish it off with extreme speed before it could do anything else. Next was his Blastoise, and since I knew that thing had Blizzard, I switched Flash out immediately. I brought out Spoonman, who did big damage with Thunder Punch, and out of all the moves the Blastoise could have used to wreck my day, he uses Whirlpool. What? I know that trapping moves were sort of broken just 1 generation prior, but considering how they're almost useless now, I'm kinda surprised that an elite trainer like Red is still using them on his team. Maybe he spent too much time on the mountain and nobody's told them they suck now, I don't know. I finish off the Blastoise with another Thunder Punch. He brings out Snorlax and I bring out Muscle. Thanks to the Reflect running out in the previous turn, my Cross Chop was able to OHKO it easily before it could do anything. Finally was his Charizard, and I bring out Chomper for one final showdown, starter versus starter. Since Red is nothing if not consistent, he uses Fire Spin, which did almost nothing, and thankfully my Surf crit OHKO'd the Charizard. Red was defeated, and I officially beat Pokemon Crystal without catching any Pokemon. So for my closing thoughts, that didn't turn out to be any harder. I know part of that was my fault due to over-leveling, and the beginning certainly was a bit of a challenge even when I was over-leveled. But once I had my full team, the rest of the playthrough went by so smoothly that I didn't really feel it was much of a challenge at all. Spoonman the Alakazam definitely earns the MVP award since it easily carried me through that playthrough, even harder than William the Ampharos carried Mikey. Thank Arceus he never learned that he could also use Alakazam on his playthrough, because that would have made his entire playthrough a frickin' cakewalk. Also, Bonk the Cubone ended up being quite the dark horse in this playthrough, especially once it got the Thick Club and was able to obliterate everything with just a single attack, which I have to admit was really fun. But anyway, that's going to do it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought of this playthrough in the comments, and let me know what other challenges you want to see me do in the future. Also, feel free to check out my Emerald playthrough in the cards below, and we'll see if we can finish my very first ever Pokemon Nuzlocke. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like it, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like it, I'll be sending Bonk to your house to come get you later. Thank you for watching. Until next time, don't get run over. I'll see you guys later. Well, at least I didn't have to deal with fast.